Dhanavat Pranam. Namaste. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Nirmala Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All glories to Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Ki Jai. Canto 1, Chapter 5, Text 4. The title of Chapter 5 is Narada's Instructions on Srimad-Bhāgavatam for Vyāsadeva. Text 4. Jigjashitam adhitam cha brahmayat tat sanhatanam tatapi so chasyatmanam akritartha iva prabho. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, or Brahma Sutra, compiled by Sri Vyāsadeva, is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly. So there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyāsadeva. So why should he lament? Text 5. Vyasa uvacha astyeva me sarvam idam tvayoktam tatapi natma purichushate me tanmulam avyaktam agadhabodam pachamahe tvatma bhavatma bhutam. Sri Vyāsadeva said, "All you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother." Purport. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in the materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narada should be approached is explained below. Text 6. Sabhai bhavan veda samasta guyam upashito yat purusha purnaha paravarashe esho manashaiva vishvam shujatyavat gunar asangaha. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. Purport. A person who is cent% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection of devotional service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. As such, the eightfold perfections of mystic power, Asta-siddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. A devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by his spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Srila Narada is cent% perfect living being, although not equal to the personality of Godhead. Text 7. Tvam payatan arka iva trilokam antascharo vayur ivatmasakshi Paravare Brahmani Dharmato Vatai Snatasya me nyumatnam alam vichakva. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive Supersoul. Please therefore find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Purport. Transcendental realization, pious activities, worshiping the deities, charity, mercifulness, non-violence, and studying the scriptures under strict disciplinary regulations are always helpful. Text 8. Sri Narada Uvacha Bhavatanudita Prayam Yaso Bhagavato Malam Inhaivaso Natusyeta Manyeta Darshanam Kilam. Sri Narada said, "You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lords is considered worthless." Purport. The eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul, personality of Godhead, is constitutionally one of being the eternal servitor of the eternal Master. The Lord has expanded himself as living beings in order to accept loving service from them, and this alone can satisfy both the Lord and the living beings. Such a scholar as Vyāsadeva has completed many expansions of the Vedic literatures, ending with the Vedanta philosophy, but none of them have been written directly glorifying the personality of Godhead. Dry philosophical speculations, even on the transcendental subject of the Absolute, have very little attraction without directly dealing with the glorification of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the last word in transcendental realization. The Absolute, realized as impersonal Brahman or localized Supersoul, Paramatma, is less productive of transcendental bliss than the supreme personal realization of his glories. The compiler of Vedanta Darshan is Vyāsadeva himself, yet he is troubled, although he is the author. So what sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of Vedanta, which is not explained directly by Vyāsadeva, the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining Vedanta Sutra in the form of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam by the self-same author. Text 9. Yatha dharma dayaskarta muni varyanu kirtita natata vasudevasya mahimahyanu varnita. Although great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances. You have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of despondency of Vyāsadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These four items are by far inferior to engagement in devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyāsadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference. And still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity, etc., one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahmabhuta stage. After attainment of this Brahmabhuta stage, one is satisfied, but satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. In passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahmabhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to Vyāsadeva that he, Vyāsadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency. Text 10. Nayad vachas chitra padam hareryaso jagat pavitram pragrinita karhichit tadbhayasam tirtam ushanti manasa nayatra hamsa nirmatyan ushikshayaha. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. Purport. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather, because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in these places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water nicely decorated with stems of lotus flowers and variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentality. Mostly the market literatures which attract men of the crows categories are literatures containing refused remnants of sensuous topics. They are generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They are full of subject matter described in decorative language, full of mundane smiles and metaphorical arrangements. Yet with all that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such poetry and prose on any subject matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men, who are compared to the swans, do not take pleasure in such dead literatures, which are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. These literatures and the modes of passion and ignorance are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being, and thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. Such spiritually advanced men are called manasa, also because they always keep up the standard of the transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily sense gratification or subtle speculation of material egoistic mind. Social literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls of material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhar, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoined by the Paramahamsas, who have grasped the essence of human activities. And thus ends our reading for today. All glories to Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Om Vishnupad Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Arupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, to the worldwide devotees, Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Niskam Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Sripad Bhakti Vigyan Muni Maharaj Ki Jai. All glories to Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. All glories to Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai. Nitai Gora Hari Hari Bol.